Alrighty. There we go. All right, so it's 3 o'clock. I'm going to start and would like to welcome all of you for joining us. If you're new, welcome. And if you were here last time, thank you for joining us again. And so we are in session number 2 of our Akamai Digital Citizenship Hui. And I would like to introduce myself. I'm Janine Nakakura. I'm a resource teacher with the Hawaii Department of Education. And I'll let Faith introduce herself and then Jamie.
Hi, everybody. We're so happy you're able to join us. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all in your little pictures on a virtual space at 6 o'clock West Coast time and then 3 o'clock Hawaii time. So pleasure to be here with you all.
All right. And I would like to make sure that you all have access to our slides. So here is the slide deck, and that's what we're going through right now. And so if someone would, joins us late or needs the link, if you could all help out and share the link to our slides, that would help us, because you know how it is to present and then try to keep a lookout on the chat. So we appreciate your help. Okay, so here's the agenda for today's session. So the agenda, if you click on that link, it will take you to a separate document with all of the links for this session. So if you're one of those, like you try to copy all the links and copy it from the chat, copy it from the presentation, you don't have to do that. It will all be in the agenda. And if I forget something, I'll add it in after. Okay, so the link to the agenda is there, and we'll try to put it in the chat. And then Brian gave us that good suggestion last night about opening the question and answering. Okay. Yep, thank you. So questions, share them in the chat. And then we also have an FAQs document that we're starting up. And so some of your questions from last time are in there, along with any other questions that you may have. And we'll also chat at the end. Okay, next slide. So we are in session number 2. Today is September 27th, and our next session will be supporting Ohana online. So information for supporting families online, and that will be Tuesday, October 25th. Okay. So next slide. So just if you missed the last session, this is a recap of session number 1. So there's a link to the recording and agenda and slides also. And basically the 3 things we tried to cover are that internet safety is mandatory according to Board of Education policy. You can also integrate digital citizenship into your existing computer science initiatives or in other content areas, and that computer science is more than just coding. Next slide. So what we want to do today is start off with getting some input from you, like we did last time. So what is one digital habit you want to change or do differently? Okay, you can think about that and then type it into the chat. Okay, what is one digital habit you want to change or do differently? And while you're thinking, I'll share mine. Okay, so a bad habit that I have is that I'll eat dinner because I'm super hungry when I get home after swimming or running and work. And I'll eat dinner, and then I'll take a break, and I'll go to my computer, and I'll check email. And then I end up staying on the computer for an hour or 2, and then it's 10 o'clock, and I still haven't finished my dinner. So I really need to just eat my dinner, and then maybe go check my email or go on the computer. So Jamie says he would like to turn off his device an hour before going to sleep. Clifford Neo says waking up to the phone. Anyone else want to share in the chat? What is one digital habit you want to change or do differently? And we'll go to the next slide just so you can see what we're going to do with your responses. So for people who are not live with us today, I'm going to type your responses into the chat. Your chat responses into this table. And people who are looking at the slides later can see what some of your responses were. Jessica says, not stay up past 10 p.m. scrolling on Instagram. All right, so thank you. Carrie, says, I'm not going to read everyone's, but getting off my phone while eating dinner, downloading too many apps, pause and think before I post, etc. Okay, so thank you for your responses, and I'll put all of them into this table later. Okay, next slide. What I do want to start with, though, is we're going to do 4 steps today. So step 1 is awareness, and we actually did that last month at session number 1. I asked the participants, how much time do you spend on devices each day? And I got a wide range, like 22 hours. Like, when do you sleep? All the way to 5 hours or 6 hours. So it varied. But the first step to making a change is awareness. Okay, so next slide. And just by chance, in my email inbox, I signed up for Common Sense Education newsletters. And okay, I admit I don't read every single one, but I try to read them when I can. And just by chance, Jamie's colleague, her name is Tali, she's the New York's education director for Common Sense Education. She wrote this email for Common Sense, and she said, I was reading with my daughter, and a friend FaceTimed me, and then I stopped to FaceTime with the friend, and my daughter was kind of, she was a little bit, taken aback. And so she said, wow, I really need to look at my habits. So she went to the digital habits checkup, and you can click on that. That's a lesson from Common Sense Education. And so you can do that yourself, or you can do that with your students. Are you able to click on that, Jamie?
Yeah, let me click on that. Which one would you like, the newsletter or the
habits checkup?
Okay, give me 1 second.
So if you want, you can sign up for their newsletters, but they also put these really great tips in it. So at the bottom on the right, digital habits checkup. If you scroll down, this just goes through a set of steps. Taking stock of your digital habits. Choose one thing you want to do differently, and so forth. Okay, so Tali, if we go back to the slide, she said that she was going to put her phone in another room so she could focus on her daughter and model, good behavior, because we're all human. And she did this with teachers at workshops, and so they, had pluses and minuses and so forth, highlights and pain points. So, we all need to check in once in a while with our habits. So next slide. Jamie's going to go into step 2, integrating into your curriculum. So I'm turning it over to Jamie.
Thanks, Janine. And I think you really point out a few things. One of the things I really value is just like that first step for our students, or the way we think about it is like being really aware of where we're at in our space so we can be positive role models. The second is finding the actual time to fit it into the many things that we already have going on. And so you're probably looking at us like, are you all crazy? Like I have like 15 million things that I have to get to, and then you're asking for another connection. So part of the step now is to just give you some really simple tips on how you can integrate this into your curriculum in a way that's seamless, so you don't feel like overwhelmed or this is just another additional task or initiative that you have to do. So I'm going to highlight for you 3 examples and take what you like. These are practical and applicable examples from other educators and schools that we've worked with. So first example is, think about it as a how do you get students on the exact same page? And I know for many of you at the very start of the year, if you have already done so, there is tech agreements that we go through. One of the recommendations that I have, and this is from a school here in the mainland, a teacher said, I'm going to start making tech agreements for every unit that I have that includes working in technology. So if your students are using Google Docs, or if you know that they're doing something online, see if you can make it a really subtle point to talk about some of the ways that they want to be safe, and then share that example or share that agreement online. What I shared for you in this first example is a tech agreement. I think this was from last year, but they're updating it, and I will update the doc when they give me the new example. But this is just a really basic example. It's a sort of cut and paste with rules and overview of how students should behave for any given particular unit. So that's one. That's a really easy way to do that, right? So when we're in front of using the application X, this is how we're actually going to integrate or use it safely. Can others give me sort of examples? And then that's what you'd want to write down for the tool. The second is, there's a school that uses this, and you like to gamify things in your classroom, or you like to have students do their choose your own adventure, a particular topic, or things that you're integrating as like project-based initiatives that you have, one of the really interesting things that you can potentially do, and this example this teacher did, is she created a series of hyperdocs where she asked the kids to integrate or to look at different hot topics that they were learning in the classroom. And so the kids at the very beginning of the unit were able to decide whether or not they wanted to look at things that cover their footprint, their digital footprint, look at their own identity, if they wanted to play some games that to ensure that they were safe when speaking to strangers. Now, if you have a unit or if you're covering something in your classroom, maybe you want to cut and paste one of these hyperdocs in that unit, just so there's some integration there. The point here is we want to leverage those multimedia experiences that kids love. And then you want to be able, if you are interested, to address multiple topics. So if you click on the link there, you will see the hyperdoc. Again, all this is available to you for completely free. So you feel free to copy and paste any of Ms. Montag's document if you'd like as well from her curriculum. And if you're like, Jamie, I want to know her and I want to know how she did that, feel free to share your email and I can put you two in touch with one another. She's a really, really great resource. So one is the rules, the second is gamifying. And then the third example I'm going to share with you is just a unique way to integrate. If you are big on storytelling or increasing narratives or writing exercises in your classes, to think about how students are navigating dilemmas online, and then having the kids, similar to like the choose your own adventure concept, having the kids describe a scenario and then write out an outcome that they like to see. Now, this example that I'm sharing, again, is from San Francisco Unified School District. There's a teacher that shared that many of her students, this is primarily in 5th grade on, but many of her students wanted to talk about these dilemmas online, things that they were grappling with outside of the classroom. And the teacher didn't want to spend as much time addressing those dilemmas. So what she did is actually had them address or write down the dilemma and then come up with what they proposed to be a solution to that dilemma. Then other kids would read their narrative or their stories and decide whether or not that's the type of solution that they wanted, or if they wanted to write something else. So this is a really unique way to integrate writing skills. What this document does, I've shared with you, is sort of an A through Z guide. So if you are interested in exploring what that looks like, what guiding questions could be helpful for your students, I highly encourage you to look at that document. All right, enough talking ahead for a second. Is there any questions to this? Feel free to either add it on the chat or unmute if you'd like. I want to be cognizant of my pace. So, Marlo, I see you nodding a few times, so I want to just recognize you for your nods. It seems like you're into that, the experiences. So thank you for that. All right.
Hey, Jamie,
Yes.
Janine,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, so these dilemmas, so I'm just clarifying. So the teacher would have students come up with a situation or a story, and then that would be shared with the class?
That's correct. Yeah. So in this case, the students create a series of digital dilemmas that either they've seen their peers do, and they would write that down, and then through the iterative process, the students would then revise their dilemmas and revise kind of how they would resolve the dilemma based on that. They would then get feedback from other students about how they can change their writing, how they can change the dilemma. And then at the very end, students will read each other's work, and then the students will then decide whether or not they want to reinforce that dilemma or reinforce that solution or think of another solution to that dilemma. So these are just kind of narratives or storytelling ways, but the prompt is probably the most important, which is allowing kids to talk about the things that they experience online. So, hey, Faith, when we were on a call earlier, I can't believe that you looked at me funny and then you took a screenshot of me. Now Faith is like, has my screenshot. I think that this is how I would want to respond to that prompt. So these are some sort of simple ways to do that, but take a look at that document if that's of an interest to you. And again, if you want to be put in contact with the educator so she can explain the process more thoroughly, by all means, I'm happy to make the introduction for you. So,
Thank you.
all right, let me close with just a few resources. And again, I'll gloss over this, and I think it's critical and important to kind of note if you are hoping to teach digital citizenship and you just don't know where to start and you just need a guideline, one of the things that I would highly recommend is going through our lesson plans. And what those lessons do is help you in many ways kind of share a few things at the early level or early stages between K through second. We rely on dance, I mean, singing and coloring books, and also just a narrative to get kids acclimated and accustomed to what are these concepts, right? What is media balance for you in this case? So if you don't have that much time, or if you have a morning meeting, if you are from this age group or this grade level, you might consider pulling something like this to help reinforce some of these skills. Now, when our kids get a little older, right around like third to seventh grade, they rely heavily on middle school and even high school point of view. And so what we've done is created a short list of videos for you where you can play these 1 to 4 minute video clips and then have these discussions with your students. This could be a dilemma that kids are grappling with, or these can be topics related to cyberbullying that you may want to reinforce in the classroom. And then finally, as our kids get a little older, we really rely on the Socratic kind of experience in seminars. And so what we are doing is we provide class discussion and prompts in order to create that experience. So I encourage you to kind of look through some of these activities that both can be self-guided and also directed. All right, I've talked to your ear off. I'm going to now transition this to Faith, but before I do, is there any questions that you all have related to, like, Jamie, where do I get started? Or this is just too much for me. Like, any things that you're thinking about as it relates to incorporating some of these resources into your curriculum? And I'm sorry if I were looking at you all, then I would sort of just like call on whoever blinks or smiles first, but I won't. So, okay. All right, wonderful, folks. I'm going to now transition it to Faith. So she's going to talk a little bit about what this all means for your accreditation or your some support. So, Faith, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. So I'll share my screen and take everybody on a little tour. So let's see. Oops. Here we go. So can you see that okay? Thanks. So, yeah, we want to kind of begin with the end in mind. So it's still early on this series of webinars, and we want to make sure that when we reach the end, everybody is in a place where they can become educator recognized. So we're inviting you to click on this link, Common Sense Educator Roadmap, and then it will take you to this page. And here it's really step by step, just really simple. So first, make a copy of this roadmap for yourself. So I'll go to File, make a copy, and here is what it's called. And I'm cool with that. Maybe I'll just add my name. It's copy, so it's really clear in my head. And then I'm gonna make a copy. Right? And then, so now I can type in here, put notes, like reminders to myself, whatever it is. And so the path that we're taking is to first learn about digital citizenship. And each of these 4 webinars will count toward what you're learning to become recognized. So we're already on our way. And but in addition, we kind of encourage you, if you're able to also take a look at oops, I better share this tab instead, and take a look at teaching digital citizenship, because that has a whole lot of helpful tips and things that can be useful to you in your work. And then after we learn, we're going to teach. And so here are some lessons suggested by Common Sense Education, but you might not be in front of students. You might be in a different kind of educator position, and that's okay too. And so you might be wondering, well, what could I do to uh, you know, fulfill this teach portion? And so there's lots of opportunities, like maybe you're working with parents and you're a parent coordinator, and using some of Jamie's examples, we could work with parents and do that whole digital dilemma with them. And as a family, and kind of think through some of these things, and they probably can come up with a lot of digital dilemmas that occur in their household, and we can kind of think together about different ways to address that or approach it. Or it might be like that tech agreement that we talked about earlier, and maybe making a family tech agreement and helping your families through that process. And it might not be even exactly the students' families. It could even be your school community. So other teachers that you work with, or partnerships that you work with, and trying to just bring digital citizenship to life, and helping everybody to kind of live as good digital citizens and spreading the word so that they can share it with the young people that they are in touch with, and their families and friends.
Hey, Faith.
And that
Brian?
means,
Oh,
pardon?
Faith, Brian has questions. Sorry, Faith,
Oh,
Brian
sorry.
has a question.
Oh, okay. Brian, you can unmute and ask.
Brian, did you have a question? Oh, mic isn't working. Okay, well, you can type it in the chat.
Yeah. And I'll just mention, this whole engagement piece as Brian is typing. Here are lots of other ideas to engage families as well. And that's going to be the focus of our next webinar, actually. And then the last step for this roadmap is to reflect and apply. So, whether it's Tali's story that Janine shared, and how Tali caught herself FaceTiming when she should have been, quality time with her daughter. And she recognized that, and she wanted to um, do that digital habit checkup and make a commitment to be there for her daughter, because she realizes that when her daughter has her own device, she would like her daughter to be able to put that device aside and give mom full attention. So it works both ways, right? But you're modeling it for the younger students. Oh, okay. Here's Brian's question. So I'm concerned about creating unreasonable paranoia. Yeah. Okay. Are these set up to nicely demonstrate risks and mitigation without cause and undue fear? Are there any suggestions about addressing those who overreact? Um, yeah, and actually, there are tools within Common Sense Education that help to sort of like find balances within the decisions to address the dilemmas. So it's not always, devices are bad, or sometimes they're good, they're helpful, right? So it's finding, having those conversations and finding different perspectives, and opening your mind to consider different ideas, and having, really rich conversations. And I don't know if Jamie or Janine want to add in anything there.
It's Janine. So two things. That's a good point, Brian. Two things. So Tali, I think, in the beginning on in her newsletter, she had highlights and pain points. So there are some highlights to using devices and social media and so forth, but there are also pain points. And I think one of her points was, information is available all of the time, which is a highlight, but information is available all of the time, which is, a pain point. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. And the second thing is that Grant, our special guest after this, I think that stoplight lesson that he taught his I'll let him describe what happened, but I think that lesson is a good example of, stopping and pausing and thinking, and is this bad, or should I pause, hesitate, or should I do it or not? And it's just kind of stopping and thinking about things, and that's where I think you can address the overreacting if you just kind of stop and pause.
Thanks, Janine. That's a good idea. Yeah. And that kind of wraps what I was going to share, except that Jamie is so gracious. He's shared his email with us. So if we have questions like this, or about that whole application process to become recognized, then we can reach out to him or Janine and I, and we're happy to answer and help in any way we can. And then we're going to be asking you to fill out our feedback form, because we love hearing from you, and we always do try to incorporate ideas where we can and address whatever your thoughts might be. And there's a link here for the remainder of events as well. And then a little bit more about the Hui sessions and the recognition. And we have a Akamai online website. So when you have a chance, you can visit there for resources as well. So as Janine mentioned, we have a really special guest this afternoon, and it's an optional 10 or 15 minutes in addition to the original 30-minute webinar that we had planned. His name is Grant Toyooka. And so for today's prize, we're saying anyone whose first name has the most letters in common with Grant will be our digital citizenship prize pack. So we'll put your names through an algorithm and try and figure out who has the most matches, and then award the prizes, and that we hope you enjoy. Oh, and let's see, Jan put in the chat, if I want to hold a parent engagement session for K-5, should I use pre-K to 2 or middle high school session?
What I'd probably do, Janice, is I'd probably start with the topic that is most interested, like families are most interested in. And then I'd pick either an example of a lesson from the 5th grade, and then an example of an activity on the 2nd grade level, and see kind of where your family is within those dynamics, those experiences. So, but I would probably start with just a quick topic, like welcome everyone to our overarching theme on media balance. Today we're going to talk about all the unique ways that you can find balance in your family's life and how we're doing it in the classroom. And so you start with all the different techniques and activities that you're doing, and then you can start with providing families with some tips. But yeah, shoot me an email. I'm sure I have a presentation deck based on the topic. I'm happy to do that. And if I'm around, I'm also happy to help you out or be a parent or a guest speaker if you need that support. So I think it's beautiful. Yeah. Great question.
Thanks for your question, Jen, and thank you, Jamie. So it gives me great pleasure right now to introduce to you. I hope you're able to stay the extra 10 or 15 minutes to hear from Grant Toyooka, a resource teacher in the Lelehua, Mililani, Wailua complex area, who's been going out into the field every chance he gets and bringing digital citizenship into action. So, Grant, I can drive your slides for you if you like. Okay.
Oh, please. Okay, thanks everybody. Just real quick share out, right? Because, how do you introduce digital citizenship when that word, that term isn't that commonly recognized? I mean, in this circle, it is. But, if you talk to like the CS work group or even just anybody, they'll ask you, what is digital citizenship? And so that's kind of a hard sell. So they asked me, well, Grant, then if that's the case, can you come and teach? I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. Okay, so here's one way we did it. And Janice, this was at your school, yeah? So next slide, please. So with the big push with computer science, those familiar with Unruly Splats, we used Unruly Splats because it's a really safe, non-threatening coding platform. And we started with computer science, right? Because that's the connection that people are saying. Oh, it's with computer science. Okay, next slide. So those that aren't familiar with it, this is what it looks like on the interface. Splats themselves are like these plastic squares, and you can really play with it and really have fun with it. But on the back end, this is what it looks like, and it's really just line coding, right? The kids are just dragging and dropping. Okay, now this is with kindergarteners, right? So I showed them what this is, and okay, guys, you're gonna code a game, and then so they played red splat, green splat, which is really the same thing as red light, green light, right? And enough time has passed from Squid Games, so I felt like it was okay to play red light, green light, and so the kids had fun, right? They decrypted what does this mean and whatnot. Okay, next slide. Then we segued, right? Telling the students, kindergarten kids, right? You know, you guys can code. That's the first step. But then did you know that there's way more things for you guys to consider? And then not all of them saw Ralph Rex the internet, but this is a beautiful one if you haven't seen it, right? Because it's so relatable on so many levels of computer science. And to Brian's question about like the ethical side of things and not too scary, this is a nice way to kind of demystify it. So I'm bringing it to the kids' forefront, right? Now that you got into coding, what do you do with that? Where does that go, right? So now using this visual, next slide. And then we connected it to prior knowledge. Like, okay, guys, you know, as public school kids and teachers, we have the GLOs, and they help us to be the best citizens that we can be. But we use the GLOs in the classroom, and we're in person, and we're in the cafeteria. So I asked them, but are there GLOs in this digital world? Because how do we know how to act in this digital world, right? You guys can code, that's a great skill, but now in this digital world, how are we behaving? Okay, next slide. So then this was my introduction to common sense. And it was like, okay, guys, you know, our friends at Common Sense Education, they have their 6 core topics. And I didn't have enough time in the day to align it. Like GLO number 1 is this one, GLO number 2 is this one, right? But the kids were able to make the connections. They're like, oh yeah, so you know, the easy one was the effective and ethical user of technology, but the rest just kind of fell into place. Like community contributor could be, right? And so the kids started to make that connection. And only again, because with elementary school, 6 GLOs, 6 core topics, right? It just kind of fit. It might not be exact, but it fit for them. Okay, next slide. And then for the activity, I told them, today, guys, we're going to focus on privacy and security. And next slide. And the digital footprint. And they're like, wow, okay, what does that look like, Mr. Toyoka? Okay, next slide. Right, so we built upon the 6 GLOs because now, guys, we're going to go into this digital world. You know how to code. Now let's make sure that everybody is safe coding, right? And then Safe for Internet Day. And so, you know, they saw this. They saw this as a nice connection as well. Okay, next slide. So then we took a little bit deeper dive into digital citizenship. Now that they're interested in it, right? Let's look at what it looks like. Next slide. And so here was what we said, again, kindergarteners now, right? We're going to do the internet traffic light. We did that. We coded it in unruly splats. But now how does it look like to be safe citizens with this, now that we're in this digital world? Okay, next slide. And it was interesting because as I led the activity as a district resource teacher, the teachers were actually kind of watching and they started to participate. And now they're starting to see what digital citizenship looks like. And so, you know, I'm not going to bore you with the details of the lesson. So if you go to the lesson, right, and just ask them all the different scenarios, go forward if you think this is safe or this is not safe. And so teachers now, and it's funny because a lot of them were like, oh, our computer tech person does the computer science side. So I'd ask them in the classroom, well, what does that look like? How does that translate to how you work with students? And do you know what they're learning? Is it more keyboarding and skills like that? Or is it this side of stuff? And they couldn't really answer. I said, that's fine, that's fair. And so as they're hearing the questions and they're hearing the conversations, that's when they started to get a little more interested. Like, oh, these kids need to know, is this website safe? Or is, you know, we started to segue a little bit with pop-ups, right? As kids started asking these questions. And again, kindergarten kids are going to have questions. And I said, okay, let's find out. So that's where this lesson really tied it in nicely. Next slide. Going forward with this, there were a couple of things. I said personalizing the content and common sense characters. And Jamie, you might have to help me with the second part. Okay, next slide. So one of the lessons, right, we talked about digital footprint. And this was right out of there. The teacher I was co-teaching with in 4th grade couldn't be there, so she was a little Bitmoji. And I told the kids, every time you see her, she's going to ask you a question to think about. So, you know, we jumped in a little bit with NGSS and what do you observe and what kind of inferences could you make with this? And of course, I mean, the common sense, the lesson plan is just so robust. It tells you all of the things that you're looking for. And the lesson stuck okay. But the very next day, I couldn't plan it for this better. This article pops up. Next slide. Okay, so this article pops up the very next day. So I had the kids the following day. So I had them on Tuesday. On Wednesday, this lesson pops up. This article pops up. On Thursday, I use it to review. And so we start talking to the kids about, hey guys, you guys ever walk through a river? And they're like, yeah, Mr. Toyoka. I said, and can you see our footprints? And they're like, no, because the river washes it away. Right. So then when I start talking about this, because now the kids are excited about dinosaurs, first grade, kindergartners and 4th graders. And I said, but you would think, right, that with this river going, all your footprints washed away, it's like the internet, right? Everything is safe. But look what happened. 113 million years ago, dinosaurs were walking through this exact same river and they thought their footprint would be washed away. And look what happened. You know, so this became really relevant to them because they're like, oh, wait a minute. So not everything gets washed away, you know, but so that's what I meant by just personalizing it because, you know, it's just something that was in the news too. So as they heard about it, it was in the news and not related, right? It wasn't like a cyber threat or it wasn't a hack or it wasn't a breach. It was dinosaur fossil footprints found, which led to the digital footprint, you know? So that was kind of a nice connection for the kids. And then that kind of had a little oohs and ahs. And then the next slide, please. This is what I meant by personalized. So Common Sense had this really cute bunch of characters, little monsters, or I don't know what you'd call them, little monsters. And so they had really great scenario, right? But where the kids got stuck, and I was like, ooh, it was great that it was an ELA lesson because they're like, but mister, how come it says feet and it's only one person? And I'm like, okay. You know, because the prompts ask you, right? So now, so this activity asked them, is feet in charge of his, in control of what he can do? And so feet appears in a video, feet post comments, right? Versus they're saying, shouldn't it be foot? And so I'm like, no, but the character's name is feet and he does XYZ. So this is the part I meant about like familiarity. I didn't spend too much time with the character development of the Common Sense characters. And that's where I lost the kids a little bit. But I love that they saw the ELA connection. So I don't know, Jamie, anything about the monsters I should know about the next time I teach this?
Probably change the name of foot, but yeah, we're about to release like character videos just introducing them all, like and what they mean for the digital citizenship. So you should see like these little 30-second clips to help kids feel connected to each of these characters. So.
Okay. That because it resonates, but and then so that's what the kids were, you know, and then in these things, right? Again, going back to the connecting with Instagram and TikTok videos and whatnot, just personalizing it. And then next slide. And this last one is a tribute to my son. He's a twin. And after I did the lesson with kindergarten, every time he goes on his iPad now, he goes, "Hey, Dad, is it safe?" And he says it, and I'm like, I want to, you know, pop him in the nose. But to me, the lesson stuck, right? That he's starting to look at it as a kindergartner, like, okay, is it safe? So just wanted to share how we link like computer science with what they're hearing about now, and then onboarding different teachers who may not necessarily think of digital citizenship and computer science in the same breath, and just kind of crosswalk it together. Yeah. And then to Brian's question about like, is it, you know, like causing undue stress and whatnot. I used one of the typical hacker photos and, you know, like, hey guys, what kind of images come to mind when you see this? And they're like all the negative stereotypical stuff. Right. And I said, but you know what? This person has a skill set. What he chose to do was on the other side of the law. And so we started talking about the character and then the digital citizenship side of that too. We said, you know, because with that skill set, you could also help people, you know, so the kids kind of saw that as a learning opportunity too. So I don't know if that helps, but okay, Faith, that's all I got.
Thanks, Grant. I love it. Taking the students from the physical, you know, actually coding, but also playing with splats, kind of a PE health kind of thing, to the red light, green light, and all of making all those connections. And that was amazing. And I saw that article about the dinosaur thing. Now that we're the water level has dropped and exposing all the footprints and stuff. Thank you so much for bringing some real world connections into our session today. Really appreciate it. I love your energy too.
Well, I had fun. I had fun. So, and the teachers got to see it. So now they were like wanting to learn more. So then they signed up.
Awesome. You're amazing. Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Grant or the session in general?
Hey, this is Janine. I'm going to stop the recording. So if anybody is shy and they want to ask a question, I am going to stop the recording, the official part of this.